kunja bihari. Jayo Radha Madhava kunja bihari. Jam Vishnu Pad Padmam Sapadva Chakacharya Astro Tasata Shishmad. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jam Vishnu Pad Padmam Sapadva Chakacharya Astro Tasata Shishmad. Shringa Guru Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Ananti Kodi Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Premsiko Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopidath Shamakund Radhakund Gita Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Navadip Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. New Dwarka Dham Ki Jai. Jamunamaya Gangamaya Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Jai. Harinam Sankirtan Jaga Ki Jai. Transcendental Prasadam Distribution Ki Jai. Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glories for the summer devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories for the summer devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories, Shri Shri Guru, Shri Guranga, Gaur Shri Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. So today we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam. This is Canto 3, Chapter 25, The Glories of Devotional Service. We're on text number 2, and this is what we're going to be studying, the teachings of Lord Kapila. He's teaching us about the path of devotional service. So there was a nice quote in this particular chapter. As I was reading the chapter, it really stuck out. And that's text number 35. And just to start off, I'll just quote that verse. O my mother, my devotees always see the smiling face of my form with eyes like the rising morning sun. They like to see my various transcendental forms, which are all benevolent, and they also talk favorably with me. So just see Krishna, his eyes are like the morning sun. And this is what Lord Kapila is going to do. He's going to give us the light of knowledge to get us out of this abyss of ignorance. So I think this quote captures the essence of Bhakti Yoga and our intimate relationship with Krishna. So this is very nice. Let's dive right into the verse. Nahi asya varṣmaṇaḥ puṁsāṁ varimṇaḥ sarva-yoginām viṣrutau śruta-devasya bhūri tṛpyanti me savaḥ nahi asya varṣmaṇaḥ puṁsāṁ varimṇaḥ sarva-yoginām viṣrutau śruta-devasya bhūri tṛpyanti me savaḥ nahi asya varṣmaṇaḥ puṁsāṁ varimṇaḥ sarva-yoginām viṣrutau śruta-devasya bhūri tṛpyanti me savaḥ. Sarva-yoginām. Yoginah sarva-devasya nayasya varṣmaṇaḥ puṁsāṁ varimṇaḥ sarva-yoginām viṣrutau śruta-devasya bhūri tṛpyanti me savaḥ. Vaishnavis, nayasya varṣmaṇaḥ puṁsāṁ varimṇaḥ sarva-yoginām śruta-devasya nayasya varṣmaṇaḥ puṁsāṁ varimṇaḥ sarva-yoginām viṣrutau śruta-devasya bhūri tṛpyanti me savaḥ. Anyone else? Nayasya varṣmaṇaḥ puṁsāṁ varimṇaḥ sarva-yoginām viṣrutau śruta-devasya bhūri tṛpyanti me savaḥ. That's good. You can only get better and better. Na, not. He, indeed. Asya, about him. Varṣmaṇaḥ, the greatest. Puṁsāṁ, among men. Varimṇaḥ, the foremost. Sarva, all. Yoginām, of yogis. Viṣrutau, in hearing. Śruta-devasya, the master of the Vedas. Bhūri, repeatedly. Tṛpyanti, are sated. My. Asavaḥ, senses. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Śaunaka continued, there is no one who knows more than the Lord himself. No one is more worshipable or more mature a yogi than he. He is therefore the master of the Vedas. And to hear about him always is the actual pleasure of the senses. Would you like to repeat? Śaunaka continued, there is no one who knows more than the Lord himself. No one is more worshipable or more mature yogi than he. He is therefore the master of the Vedas. And to hear about him always is the actual pleasure of the senses. Jai. So this is the key, how to get pleasure and happiness. Purport. In Bhagavad-gītā, it is stated that no one can be equal to or greater than He, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is confirmed in the Vedas also. Eko bahūnāṁ yo vidadhāti kāmān. He is the supreme living entity and is supplying the necessities of all other living entities. Thus, all other living entities, both viṣṇu-tattva and jīva-tattva, are subordinate to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. The same concept is confirmed here. Nahi asya varṣmaṇaḥ puṁsāṁ. Among the living entities, no one can surpass the Supreme Person, because no one is richer, more famous, stronger, more beautiful, wiser, or more renounced than He. These qualifications make Him the Supreme Godhead, the cause of all causes. Yogis are very proud of performing wonderful feats, but no one can compare to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anyone who is associated with the Supreme Lord is accepted as a first-class yogi. Devotees may not be as powerful as the Supreme Lord, but by constant association with the Lord, they become as good as the Lord Himself. Sometimes the devotees act more powerfully than the Lord. Of course, that is the Lord's concession. Also used here is the word varimṇaḥ, meaning the most worshipful of all yogis. To hear from Krishna is the real pleasure of the senses. Therefore he is known as Govinda. For by his words, by his teachings, by his instructions, by everything connected with him, he enlivens the senses. Whatever he instructs is from the transcendental platform. And his instructions, being absolute, are non-different from him. Hearing from Krishna or his expansion or plenary expansion like Kapila is very pleasing to the senses. Bhagavad-gītā can be read or heard many times, but because it gives great pleasure, the more one reads Bhagavad-gītā, the more he gets the appetite to read and understand it. And each time he gets new enlightenment. That is the nature of transcendental message. Similarly, we find that transcendental happiness in the Srimad Bhagavatam. We find that same happiness. The more we hear and chant the glories of the Lord, the more we become happy. Jai. The key to happiness is the Srimad Bhagavatam. Ki Jai. Om Gyana Tamarandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksusun Militamina Tasmai Shri Gurve Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitamina Bhutale Swamupakadamayam Didati Swapadantikam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchakopa Tubhischa Kripasindu Bevacha Patitanam Pavinebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So let's read the translation again. Śaunaka continued. So Śaunaka is asking Suta Goswami. He is so eager to hear. And so he knows who he's hearing from. There is no one who knows more than the Lord himself. No one is more worshipable or more mature a yogi than he. He is therefore the master of the Vedas, and to hear about him always is the actual pleasure of the senses. So Śaunaka was really eager to hear because he knew the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And it's described to him in the purport. Who is he? He's the most knowledgeable. He knows everything. He's the most powerful person. Just think if he was about to appear before you, what would you ask him? Or what would he even say? What would he say to you? What do you think he was going to say? Because he's free, right? He's a supreme free, he's supreme knowledgeable. Everything about him is like powerful, beautiful, everything. So what is he going to do? He's going to teach us. He's going to get heavy actually in his teaching to his mother. He's going to cut through the knots of this material enjoyment, material ignorance. He's going to just smash it. So it's going to be, and she says, you're like the eye, my transcendental knowledge, and you're like an axe. You're going to cut this. So Śaunaka Rishi is very eager to hear from Suta Goswami. So actually, you know, there's a book the BBT made. It's called The Teachings of Lord Kapila, the son of Devahūti. And it breaks down this chapter, 25. It gives the translation and the purport, plus it ties in all the lectures Srila Prabhupada gave on this chapter. So it's really nice. I'd like to read this section. From this particular verse we read, it's from the Teachings of Lord Kapila. And this is the last two paragraphs, and how Prabhupada really relates it to the end of our purport here. So I'll read this. There's another nature which is eternal and is transcendental. So he's quoting this verse from the Bhagavad-gītā. And this manifested, unmanifested matter. It is supreme and is never annihilated. When all in this world is annihilated, that part remains as it is. That supreme abode is called unmanifested and infallible. And it is the supreme destination. When one goes there, he never comes back. That is my supreme abode. Okay, now this is the real nice paragraph here. Everything is present in Vaikuntha. There we can have eternal, blissful life, full of knowledge, Sat Chit Ananda. It is not compulsory for us to rot in this material world. The easiest way to go to Vaikunthas is Janma Karma Chame Divyam Evam Yo Veti Tattvataha. Simply try to understand Krishna. Why does he come? What are his activities? Where does he come from? Why does he come in the form of a human being? We only have to try to understand this and study Krishna as he explains himself in Bhagavad-gītā. What is the difficulty? God personally explains himself as he is. And if we accept Bhagavad-gītā as it is, we shall no longer have to transmigrate. Tvadeham punar janmi naiti. We shall no longer have to endure birth and death, for we can attain our spiritual bodies, Sat Chid Ananda Vigraha, and live happily in Krishna's family. Krishna is providing for us here, and he will also provide for us there. So we should know that our happiness is in returning home, back to Godhead, where we can eat, drink, and be merry in Krishna's company. Jai. So this is how we get free from our material misery. If we're unhappy now, so this is the clue. This is our process. I was just taking a real nice devotee to the airport the other day, and she was explaining to me how was that, because I noticed she was kind of tired. I go, did you sleep okay? And she said, no, I don't sleep very good when I travel. I'm so full of stress. I just laid in bed. Can you sleep on the plane? No, I can't sleep on the plane. It's just too much stress. So it's like, and then I actually had just finished reading this purport. I was reading the Teachings of Lord Kapila. And I read this, and I quoted this to her. And she's like, oh yeah. She goes, one time I was traveling with some kirtaniyas in India, and the traveling was hectic. But we're always chanting, doing all these kirtans and things. And it was actually blissful. And I was feeling energy. You see? So this is the stress. It's like our material body's response to what we perceive as threats. So like in modern life, it just leads to chronic stress. And how do we manage that? we have to identify the source. What is it? And these are the teachings that Lord Kapila is going to open our eyes with the light of this transcendental knowledge. And identify the source is this gross, dark, material body. So what do we do with that body? So we have to use the body to exercise our right to engage in devotional service, to practice meditation on Krishna, practice this chanting, hearing and chanting. So we see we have to understand that you can't really avoid stress, but we can focus on our response to stress, how we respond to it. And it could be an opportunity for growth. So this is what happens. So another thing also which leads to stress, and they've had studies, it's the inability to say no. Because even the same devotee was like so engaged and so overbooked with so many things, this and that. You get overwhelmed, overcommitment. And then what happens is you compromise your personal needs and your values. And then what happens is you get resentment, you lose control, poor performance. They say lack of sleep is like going around intoxicated. Can you imagine? You see? So saying no is crucial. We have to set boundaries, make intentional choices, maintain your mental health, achieve personal growth. And this is what we're doing. Kapila Dev is teaching us. He's cutting the knot. What to say no to. Stop this, stop that. Just do what's important. Do the most important things. You don't have to try to do everything. And this is what the senses are screaming, explaining to us. Get this, get that. This is the mode of passion. It's all it is just the desire to enjoy more and more and more and more and more and more. And then what happens is it gets worse and worse and worse. Then you get into the mode of ignorance, and then it just becomes no enjoyment. It's all suffering. And more suffering. It leads to it like that. So anyway, that's really, I think, nicely ties in these lectures Prabhupada gives. So I'd like to do like a little overview of where we are in this particular chapter. So here we are in the glories of devotional service, and we're just in this second verse. For 1 to 5 is like it shows Śaunaka Rishi's his eagerness to hear about Lord Kapila, so his glorified. And this is what we're learning right now, the glorification of Lord Kapila Dev. So it's very nicely described. This chapter is going to describe the superiority of devotional service over other spiritual practices. It's going to tell us about the nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, our relationship with from the soul and with God. It's going to teach us the temporary nature of the material world and the process to engage this dark, gross, ignorant body, the senses, in Krishna's service. And the super importance of hearing and chanting about Krishna. And then our goal ultimately is to attain the love of God and return back to the spiritual world, as Prabhupada mentions in the purport there. So also we're going to talk about the role of the spiritual master, which, Devahūti was so fortunate. Her husband was like a spiritual master. And now her son, what to speak of spiritual master, he's like the Supreme Personality of Godhead who knows everything. So that's so nicely described there. So in the first verse, Śaunaka praises Lord Kapila as an incarnation, and then the second verse, he's stating that no one is more knowledgeable than him. And then the third, like these first 5 verses, so then Śaunaka is going to request Suta Goswami to precisely describe the Lord's activities and pastimes. And then Suta Goswami is going to introduce, in the 4th verse, Maitreya, the powerful sage and friend of Vyasadeva. And he was asking about this same thing. So then he's going to relate that to him. And then Lord Kapila, it's in the 5th verse, it's going to explain how he stayed in the Bindu Sarova to please his mother. And then it elaborates on his position as an incarnation of Krishna. So this is all nicely described. So also here, I think we can't really go to everything, but there's actually 5 questions that or 4 questions, I think, that Devahūti asks in this chapter. But Lord Kapila Dev only answers 2, and then the rest goes into the next chapters. So the first question is in text 10 and 11, and this is what Devahūti is saying. "O my Lord, please explain to me in detail how the ultimate truth can be understood, the process to realize it, and the means to attain it. I am your surrendered servant, and I wish to engage in your devotional service." So Lord Kapila answers in texts 12 and to 27. So he says that it's the nature of the material world and the living entity's entanglement in it. This is the material energy. And he talks about the process of Sankhya philosophy, which analyzes the material elements, and he talks about the importance of devotional service, the role of the spiritual master, and the nature of Krishna and the process of creation, and the importance of human life attaining self-realization. And then if we go to the second question, she asks, is what kind of devotional service is worth developing and practicing to help me easily and immediately attain to your service, to the service of your lotus feet? So there, the answers are given in texts 31 to 44, actually, to the end of the chapter. So that's where he answers. You can see that there. So let's see how he answers that. Where is it? Okay, so he talks about the nature of devotional service as superior to other processes, how to engage the senses, importance of constantly thinking of the Lord and his transcendental forms, and how the Lord reciprocates with his devotees, and the ultimate goal of returning home, back to Godhead. So this is what's nicely described in this chapter. So something to look forward to, the nectar. So yeah, Lord Kapila is going to say how his teachings is the most direct and effective means to attain spiritual perfection and realize our eternal relationship with Krishna. So that's so nicely described there. So here we see that Krishna gifted himself as the Bhagavatam, and Krishna actually appears within it. And we see this is the appearance of Lord Kapila Dev, his appearing. So this he's going to explain to his mother. There's a few points that I put together here. There's like 10 points, basically, from we can glean from this particular verse and the lectures that Srila Prabhupada gave in the teachings of Lord Kapila Dev. So the first one is the supreme position of Krishna. So Prabhupada emphasizes it in his lectures also, that there's nobody equal to or greater than Krishna. And that reinforces the theme of this whole chapter, actually. And then the second thing is that he is the maintenance of all living entities. Prabhupada explains that Krishna maintains all living entities from the highest to the lowest. And this ties into the chapter's discussion on the Lord's all-pervading nature and his role as the ultimate sustainer, as we read in the purport there. And then also the third thing is the qualities of the Supreme Lord. Prabhupada lists, and of course we know Prabhupada's quoting in all kinds of different scriptures, that his unparalleled qualities, as we mentioned, richness, fame, strength, beauty, wisdom, renunciation. So that's his supreme position. And then the fourth item brought up is association with devotees. So this is, if we associate with the Lord, we become a first-class yogi. So this aligns with also associating with sadhus, devotees. And then the pleasure we gain, this is the fifth item, in hearing about Krishna. So Prabhupada explains that hearing about Krishna is the real pleasure of the senses. And we read that quote, this is how we actually become happy. And then the sixth thing is the transcendental nature of Krishna's instructions. So it's pointed out that Krishna's teachings are from the transcendental platform and are non-different from him. So by hearing what we're hearing now is actually, it's non-different than Krishna. So this is Krishna appearing. And then he talks about the futility of material pursuits. And Prabhupada elaborates on that, on the temporary nature of material positions and possessions. So this is echoing the theme of the chapter is detachment. And so the eighth item is the ultimate goal of human life. And he talks about the real purpose of human life is to understand Krishna and get shelter at his lotus feet. And then simplicity of the process. So this is again talking about how we become stressed out because we can't say no to the senses. So it becomes very complicated, and it just builds up stress and anxiety. So we have to understand Krishna. It's simple for the devotees, and so that's the accessible spiritual path that we have. And then the 10th thing is liberation we get from the cycle of birth and death. So Krishna can free us from the cycle of birth and death, and this is what he's doing to his mother, Devahūti. And any of us who read this chapter, also, we will benefit from this. So this is kind of what points that I stuck with me in this particular chapter 25. So here, Srila Prabhupada uses a metaphor in one of his lectures that I was talking about. And he uses the metaphor of cow dung, just to illustrate the foolishness of considering oneself safe while others are in danger. So this is the quote. Dry cow dung is used for fuel, and it is said that when the dry cow dung is being burned, the soft cow dung is laughing, saying, "Oh, you are being burned, but I am safe." It does not know that when it dries, it will also be thrown into the fire and burned to ashes. So this is what happens. So this is an interesting metaphor that how people in the mature world, they may think that they're safe from suffering or destruction while others are experiencing difficulties, and we just, haha, that's you. You're just a loser. What can you, like that. So I'm comfortable in my mansion or whatever. So this is what happens. We take, we're safe from others' difficulties. So the soft cow dung will eventually dry also. And this is what happens, and it'll be used as fuel. And that's everyone in the mature world is subject to the laws of nature and will eventually face suffering and death. This is a universal thing, material suffering. So that's why we have to seek spiritual knowledge and liberation rather than feeling complacent, in our current situations. So also in this chapter, the analogy of the axe is used. And this is what we read in the Bhagavad-gītā in the 15th chapter of the banyan tree, how this mature world is compared to a banyan tree, and we're engaged in fruitive activities, and there's no end to that banyan tree. So we wander from one branch to another, and it has no end. And if you're attached to this tree, there's no possibility of liberation. And the Vedic hymns are meant for elevating oneself, and they're called the leaves. And this tree has roots, they grow upward, and they begin from where Brahma is located. And the topmost planet in the universe, you can see him there. So if we can understand this indestructible tree of illusion, then we can get out of it. And then Prabhupada mentions in a purport there, let's see what verse that's from. Actually, the first verse, he talks about that. And let's read about it. He said, the process of extrication should be understood. In the previous chapters, it has been explained that there are many processes by which to get out of the material entanglement. And up to the 13th chapter, we have seen that devotional service to the Lord is the best way. So he's talking about devotional service. So that's what we're reading in this particular canto, the power of devotional service. And then in the verses 3 and 4, this is what it describes there. The real form of this tree cannot be perceived in this world. No one can understand where it ends, where it begins, or where its foundation is. But with determination, one must cut down this strongly rooted tree with the weapon of detachment. Thereafter, one must seek that place from which, having gone, one never returns, and there surrender to that Supreme Personality of Godhead, whom everything began and from everything has extended from time immemorial. So this is Devahūti, that's what she's saying in text 11 of this chapter. That she's saying, I took shelter of your lotus feet. You're the only person I can take shelter of. And you're an axe which can cut the tree of material existence. Therefore I offer my obeisances unto you. And she's going to inquire from him. So that's so nicely described. This is a nice metaphor. So this tree, that represents the deep-rooted nature of material attachments and conditioning. And it implies very difficult to overcome that. So Bhakti Yoga, it actually symbolizes this axe, the power of effectiveness of devotional service. So that can sever our attachments. And this is what Kapila Muni is going to do. So that's what we have to do. We have to sharpen this axe. That means that we have to engage, in devotional service and understand its potency and precision to cut. So that's so important, this transformative power of devotional service. Okay, so this says, there's another verse in this chapter which we quoted. I mean, that's the same verse I started off with in the beginning. O my mother, my devotees always see the smiling face of my form with eyes like the rising sun. They like to see my various transcendental forms, which are all benevolent, and they also talk favorably with me. So there's a couple nice purports I'd like to read in this regard. And this is what it says here. As soon as they see the Lord in his different forms, the devotees become saturated with love, for they do not find any difference between the Lord and his form in the temple, as do the atheists. The smiling face of the deity in the temple is beheld by the devotees as transcendental and spiritual, and the decoration of the body of the Lord is very much appreciated by the devotees. So we see Lord Jagannath is coming close to our Rath Yatra. So we'll have that opportunity that Krishna will come out and give his darshan. And then Prabhupada continues another purport. He says, the devotees express their minds before the deity. In many instances, the deity also gives answers. So this shows that the relationship between Krishna and his different incarnations with the devotees. But one must be very elevated devotee in order to be able to speak with the Supreme Lord. Sometimes the Lord informs the devotee through dreams. These exchanges of feelings between the deity and the devotee are not understandable by atheists, but actually the devotee enjoys them. Kapila Muni is explaining how the devotees see the decorated body and face of the deity and how they speak with him in devotional service. So this captures the essence. So we know Prabhupada, when he was here, the deities actually spoke to him and told him to go to India. And look what's happening in India now, spreading so much. And just the other day, my Guru Maharaj, Jayapataka Maharaj, he said he had a dream the other night, and he dreamt about the Atlanta deities and how they had just finished offering bhoga to the deities, but yet he said they still were hungry. So then they made more arrangements to offer more prasadam. So I'd like just to end with this one quote. This is from the same chapter we're in. The yogis, equipped with transcendental knowledge and renunciation and engagement in devotional service for their eternal benefit, take shelter at my lotus feet, and since I am the Lord, they are thus eligible to enter into the kingdom of God without fear. So that's so nicely described there. So this is our hope that this verse that we quoted today, Nahi asya varṣmaṇaḥ puṁsāṁ, that there's no one more knowledgeable, worshipable, mature yogi and his the pleasure of the senses. So hopefully by connecting to this chapter and the overall message, we're inspired to deepen our devotional services and practices and strengthen our relationship with Krishna. So just one more thing. I did a little website here. It's a simple website where you could scan and it gives the essence of this chapter. So you could scan that if you would like. But it's very simple. It just kind of expands and goes into the different topics. And you could, review and refresh this knowledge that we're given today. So just to give you an idea, I'll go to that site. So here, just the glories of devotional service. The nature of devotional service, and you could click on some of these. It tells a little bit more about each item, like that. And then you could go into all the different quotes there. So the key quote, a pure devotee who is attached to the activities of devotional service and always engaged in my service of my lotus feet never desires to become one with me. So there you go. Jai. Any comments, questions, realizations? Oh, Hare Krishna. Jai. Jai, anybody want to add anything? Maharaj? Anyone? Okay. Well, thank you for your kind attention. All glories to Srimad Bhagavatam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Jai. Yeah, please. Thank you.